What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. So just when you think you're all done with that 3DS and that pesky Dreamcast, both systems are getting new games this year, and we're going to go over that one here today. Also, Balan Wonderworld came out on Friday to no review scores being published, mostly because Square sent out review codes on release day, but I noticed there were some strange things happening with the user reviews on Metacritic that I wanted to go over here, and it turns out Monster Hunter Rise might actually be a big seller for Capcom. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton. And if you're new to the Spawn channel, make sure you subscribe down below. And we're gonna start today with a studio called Mistwalker, who's making a game called Fantasian. And from what I've seen with the game, it looks really cool. The art style is the thing that's been super interesting to follow, because what they're doing are building little models and landscapes in person, and then kind of taking pictures of it and putting it into the game. And it's turned into this really unique looking art style, but it's Mistwalker, and some people are wondering, what about your legacy titles? And that's something that VGC asked in a recent interview. The Last Story on the Wii has something of a cult following. Once both parts of Fantasian have been released, do you have any interest whatsoever in remastering or remaking it, or even other Mistwalker games like Blue Dragon or Lost Odyssey? And this was from Sakaguchi, who responded, "To be perfectly honest, there aren't any plans for any remakes at the moment. Although they're called remakes, the amount of effort and resources it would command means the difference is basically nil between developing a remake versus a completely new game, and I would personally find myself more attracted to the idea of coming up with another original story or world, or building something new." I completely agree, and that's why they should work on that being after Fantasian's done. Lost Odyssey 2, okay, maybe they won't work on that, maybe they'll work on something brand new if Fantasian goes over well, but I think they should at least look into doing something like a Lost Odyssey, a Blue Dragon, or a Last Story remaster onto current platforms. You can play Lost Odyssey on the Xbox Series, but it's through backwards compatibility. I mean, do a full remaster and release and make a big deal of it, just to see if people would be interested in a sequel for Lost Odyssey. At the very least, get Last Story and move it up to current platforms. That'd be pretty interesting to see. Also, something pretty interesting happened over the last couple of days that actually made me kind of excited for the possible future of Legacy of Kain, because what happened here was on Steam, Soul Reaver was actually removed, and in its place, there was a message that said it had been pulled for updates. And actually, a lot of people got excited at the idea of maybe it getting a little remaster or some sort of patch that would maybe add some extra graphical features or just something there. But turns out Square did do an update and said that they were preparing it to release, I guess, on GOG or Good Old Games. So they were doing some quality of life improvements, mostly, I figure, working with compatibility on different PCs, video cards, resolutions, menus, controls, all of that. But the fact that people were so interested in Soul Reaver disappearing makes me think maybe there is still an audience for a new game in the Legacy of Kain series. At the very least, I mean, if they did a really cool Soul Reaver release, even if it's something like what Aspire's been doing with some of these older Star Wars Jedi Knight games, that'd be kind of fun. Oh, and we did get some new information on Project Triangle Strategy. This, of course, is the game that was unveiled in the last Nintendo Direct that seems like a direct callback to Final Fantasy Tactics, still in that HD 2D setup that worked pretty well for Octopath Traveler. We can take a look here. This was on a live stream over on YouTube with the producer for the game, where they say, "We are planning for the game to have multiple endings. As for the game time, that's still up in the air. We always aim for around the 50-hour mark, but it never seems to turn out that way." So I am liking what I've been hearing with the Project Triangle Strategy game, but it is odd with the title. I do wonder if that will change over time, but honestly, the biggest critique I have so far is the title, because the game itself is awesome. You can play the demo now, and they are just looking for feedback and ways that they can improve it as they go into 2022 when they are planning a release. But multiple endings, maybe some hidden boss battles, 50 hours plus in terms of game time. Yes, this is the strategy game I was hoping that we would get here in 2022. No, it's not called Final Fantasy Tactics, and that's a shame, but Project Triangle Strategy is still looking really, really cool. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this new 3DS and new Dreamcast game. Yeah, it's interesting to think that you can buy a new Dreamcast game in 2021. When you get in, you take it out of the plastic wrap and you pop it in your Dreamcast from 1999, but that's something you'll be able to do, and we can take a look at those games here. We're gonna start with the 3DS one. This is Andro Danos 2 on the 3DS. This from Pixel Heart, and it looks like they have it up for pre-order currently at $34.90 in terms of euros. I believe that's $40 in US, and they say the sequel to the famous shoot 'em up from Visco Studio is coming to Pixel Heart. It's time to bring out your good old spaceship fighter in Androgenos 2. And looking at this, they do have apparently a limited amount of these they're going to sell. Further down, they mentioned 5,000 numbered copies and a certificate of authenticity, which would be official from Pixel Heart. And then 3,000 games or copies will be available on their site. If we go over to the Dreamcast version, there are actually two because we have Androgenos 1 and then 2. They had a trailer. It's an arcade shoot 'em up style game, which looks pretty good, but it is kind of cool to see them talk about it on the Dreamcast here at €29.90, and that goes up to I believe $35 in the US, and then 35 euros, and then 40 in the US for the second one. And we do see here that they have 500 copies of this game available on their site for the Dreamcast, saying there will be no restocking. They also mention a reversible manual and the game CD, of course, and this release is set for September 2021, and this is currently in pre-order, so you can go over their website, check all of that out. They have a bunch of other games as well. It's just interesting to see that, a Dreamcast game that you can pick up and it'll release later on, closer to the fall of 2021, and that's actually not necessarily new. It seems like every year there are still Dreamcast games coming out, which is really interesting that the audience for that system has never really gone away, and the developers who are interested in the system continue to create games for it. It's kind of cool. I mean, the 3DS, yeah, that's still much newer than the Dreamcast. However, people are still continuing to support these systems, and I'll just be curious, how much longer do we go with the Dreamcast? I know you can basically burn games, and I'm sure you can develop and then just put it on a disc and drop it in the Dreamcast in some instances, but these are like commercial releases that are happening here, so I don't know. We'll keep an eye on any extra or new Dreamcast games coming up, mostly because I'm curious how much longer we're gonna go with the system. Next up, let's talk about Balan Wonderworld. It came out on Friday and the reviews were non-existent because of those late review codes, and outside of people's initial impressions and thoughts on it, which weren't very good, there wasn't a lot on Metacritic. In fact, if we go over there now, there's one review currently on the Series X page, and that is a 40 from VGC. And then if we go over to the PlayStation 5 page, looks like they have two up right now, 82 from Video Chums, and then 50 from IGN France, and from what I've seen, nothing on the Switch as of now. But oddly enough, if you take a look at those user scores, we have a 9.0 on the Series X, an 8.5 on the PS5, and a 7.9 on the Switch, but it was actually much higher than this just a day ago. I actually put it up on Twitter and I noticed that it was at like a 9.8 or something, which was very odd because everyone who had been playing it with those impressions were saying how poor the game was, and we ourselves played it with the demo. So I decided to go in and start reading some of these user reviews, and a lot of them read like gibberish or like machines kind of wrote it, essentially bots. And here's a few that I actually screen capped and put on Twitter. Like, look right at the top, YGN, a colorful, fun, and essentially unique game. My compliments to the game developer who have been able to recreate the feeling of mystery, charm, and joy like those found in Sega's classic 90s games. Games that, like this one, still managed to keep me entertained for hours. This is pretty much an old-fashioned game made for today's generation, but people today prefer to see it. And that's a 35 out of 38 users found this helpful. And if we go down a little further, this is my favorite one. This is left by EZHYQ, saying, absolute funny and cutie game. It's something really interesting to playing, especially when you make a full immersion on it and you find out that really blast of genius design that I love deserves all the penny spent for it, in my humble opinion. So you start reading through these user reviews and you notice, yeah, they're very broken in terms of sentence structure, language, and all of this. And it starts to become more and more clear. Yeah, it looks like it's a bunch of bots that are posting, but it's weird because it's going in the opposite direction. Generally, when these user reviews get hit really hard with a bunch of reviews, it's to lower the score, like review bombing. This is like reverse review bombing. It's going the opposite direction, trying to push it up to like a 9.5 or even a 10 on the user review side of things. But this isn't necessarily the first time we've seen this. Back with Assassin's Creed Origins, I noticed that Kotaku had put up a piece years ago talking about something similar happening there, where it seemed that bots and fake reviews were hitting the user review section to kind of artificially boost up that score. And the thing here is, I don't think it's Square doing this. Like, people were wondering, wow, Square is just, they're just going out and hiring bots and paying a bunch of money to have all of these reviews hit. I don't think they would pay to have like 38 reviews go up to try to boost scores for user reviews on Balan Wonderworld. I don't even, like, Square, I think, just pushed that game out the door and they're already moving on. They're like, oh, all right, good luck out there. I don't think in their mind, they're like, well, we got to boost those user reviews on Metacritic. There's no other way to make this sell. So the only thing I can think of is that it's just like a troll attempt, because it'd be funny if Balan Wonderworld, which is obviously going to end up getting crushed in the reviews out of outlets, it'll probably end up like in the mid 50s maybe on its Metacritic score. I guess it'd be funny if it was like 52 on Metacritic and a 9.8 on the user reviews, just to confuse people who actually go there and look through it. Although I have noticed that a lot of reviews are starting to come in on the user review side that is trying to counterbalance all of those 10s currently. So once again, it's going the opposite way. Usually a lot of review bombing comes in and it's a bunch of zeros, then people come in with the 10s. It's like the 10s came in from the bots and now people are coming in with the zeros trying to lower it. It's weird stuff, but it's Balan Wonderworld. What do you expect? Next up, let's talk about that Xbox event that took place on Friday, the ID at Xbox. I didn't see a lot of people talking about it, and looking back on it, I think it's because the thing was 3 hours long, and it was a lot of like smaller games, nothing that made a massive impact. I mean, like Stalker 2 was there. That was pretty cool, the Ascent and Second Extinction, but we can see a quick screenshot here of all of the games that were announced, this courtesy of Windows Central after they went through all of them. I think we were just getting to a point where people were like, wow, this is a long presentation. They kind of just tuned out, and that's fine. There were a lot of games shown there, but what was really impressive was, as they went along, they announced 23 games heading to Game Pass day one. And you can see that list here also from Windows Central, and you just start going through here, and yes, there are some smaller games. There are also some pretty large games as well. Of course, Among Us, that massive game there, just dropping right into Game Pass is pretty cool. Second Extinction, that one is coming out next month. So 1 month from now, we'll be able to just download that from Game Pass. And that's the game that is, it seems to be a dinosaur first-person shooter style game. I kind of looked at it, and I know initially people were like, oh, this kind of looks like a Dino Crisis mixed with Turok style game. I mean, I guess we'll see. The good news here is it's going to be on Game Pass, so we just get to kind of download it. Then like the Ascent will head to Game Pass day one, as well as Stalker 2. I do like this strategy from Microsoft. Even get some of the smaller games into Game Pass day one. It gives them a lot of exposure, especially from those different studios, because maybe you download a game from Game Pass that you've never heard of the studio, you really like it, and then maybe you'll just follow that studio a bit closer down the road and look into their next game. And there's also been a lot of reports, some stats coming from Microsoft even, that people who have subscribed to Game Pass and play these games will end up spending 20% more, apparently, in some of these games. Probably ones that have microtransactions, sure, all that. But they just become more invested in video games because I guess they get to play more of them and try them out without too much more risk on top of things. It's a little harder to put out $40, $50, $60 for a game that you're taking a chance on. It's a lot easier to just hit the download button. So I like the idea of more and more games showing up in Game Pass day one, and Microsoft had a pretty good showing here. It's just a little too long, but 23 games heading to Game Pass day one. I mean, that's some pretty solid stuff. And in our last bit of news, let's talk about Monster Hunter Rise, a game that I am really enjoying right now. And from what I can see online, a lot of people are playing this game. And I was expecting this one to be a massive seller for Capcom, mostly because Monster Hunter World basically took the series and shoved it into the mainstream light. I mean, really, if you look at Monster Hunter World, it's over 16 million copies sold. That is the best-selling Monster Hunter game by a lot. And Iceborne came out and sold over 7 million copies. So the anticipation and the expectations for Rise, very, very high. And it seemed to have met those, with reviewers really enjoying the game. And now it looks like the sales figures that are going to be reported this week are going to be astronomical. We're starting to get some early reports now out of a couple of different places that it could have topped upwards of 1.8 million copies sold in Japan already. So like Friday and Saturday, 1.8 million. We're going to see the sales charts this week come out from Famitsu, and we'll really see what the actual numbers are, especially like physically. And then we'll try to figure out, okay, what is it digitally? Because that's the #1 spot on the eShop right now. And we'll see how it also moved switches along with that Monster Hunter bundle, of course, hitting shelves. But we can even see this here, for example, with several people on Twitter kind of pointing out some of the spots at retail where Monster Hunter was just flying off the shelves. This is from Dr. Soken Toto saying at the Bikamura retail store in Tokyo, Monster Hunter Rise is sold out, including the special edition. Very rare to see a game sold out like that. We have Daniel Ahmed pointing out Monster Hunter Rise has had a successful launch globally, especially in Asia. The game is already sold out physically in Japan. In China, the game is already the #1 console title on Game Live streaming platforms. image below is from one store during the launch in Hong Kong. You see several people outside just lined up around the block. And a lot of this hype and excitement around Monster Hunter Rise and some of the stories running through sellouts has led Capcom stock to surge to a new all-time high. And it's pretty cool to see this because before Monster Hunter World came out, Capcom wasn't in the greatest spot. We've talked about, jokingly even, oh, Microsoft might go and buy Sega because Sega isn't having a great time. Capcom, that might have actually happened, believe it or not. Like, Microsoft may have bought Capcom if Monster Hunter World did not succeed like it did, but it did, and Capcom's been on a roll ever since with Resident Evil moving along pretty well. Monster Hunter is just on fire, so we'll keep an eye out for the numbers coming up this week because I think it is going to be a massive, massive number on those sales starts. I'm thinking 1.8 million is actually kind of expected right now, but we'll see. And before we go to the comment of the day, we're taking a look at the poll that I posted up yesterday, where I asked, how do you think Jim Ryan has done as head of PlayStation since being promoted in 2019? 72% of you said not great. PlayStation has been making some strange decisions, and 28% of you said good. Sony has been rolling along with the correct ideas. Now, I asked this question because it was brought to my attention that over on metro.co.uk, we had this article that was written up. Jim Ryan is leading PlayStation to its death. This being from a reader who had written in with this opinion. And I really started thinking, I was like, wow, you know what? I really don't see a lot of people that excited about Jim Ryan running things right now, like online. I don't see many people praising anything he's doing currently. And a lot of it ends up being bad news that people are talking about, specifically with kind of the legacy software and how it's being treated right now. But if that announcement is made with the PS3 stores being shut down and the PlayStation Portable and the Vita, that's not going to go over well, especially with the PS5 not having any real backwards compatibility to it. So I think if you look at it from a business perspective, Jim Ryan's been doing a good job because the PS5 is rolling along, but it's a long generation, so we'll see how things go over the next couple of years. And we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Paul saying, rumor is that next Kojima game will be for Xbox. You know what? That actually wouldn't be a bad idea necessarily for Microsoft to try that. Sony came in and they helped fund Death Stranding, and I don't know how sales really went down for that on the PlayStation. I don't think PlayStation systems flew off the shelves because Death Stranding was there, but I still think it was a cool addition to the overall library. I mean, people really enjoyed it on PC, but looking at this from Microsoft's perspective, I think if Kojima has an interesting idea for them, it would be in their best interest to at least fund the game and get it out there and make it something that is only on the Xbox PC ecosystem, the Windows Game Pass ecosystem. It would be a big move for Phil Spencer to do that, as he keeps saying he's committed to the Japanese market. That's a good way to show that you are at least interested in trying things to make an impact there, because it's going to take several generations to make any kind of movement when it comes to console sales in Japan for the Xbox, but this would be a good first step towards that. And ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Where's the new 3DS game, or maybe you're dusting off your Dreamcast, getting ready for that new game coming out later this year. Let me know about that. And then also, what do you think about Balan Wonderworld and those odd user review scores that are coming in, the reverse review bombing? And did you pick up Monster Hunter Rise, and how many copies you think are going to be reported sold in Japan this week? Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.